Hey Truth Seekers, welcome back. Zach here. Today is December 2nd, 2015. One of the major news stories today is that Britain's government voted to bomb Syria, an act of war, and another step in the direction of world war, which many nations are taking a step in. What I want to reveal in this post is what I have been exposing for 2 years on my written blog and this video channel, and that is the Freemason ownership over much of this world. The Freemasons are an order that believes in conquering by dividing and ruling through secrecy. They are very much into esoteric practices such as numerology. And what I want to show in this video is the Masonic fingerprints that are definitely coded into the vote today to bomb Syria, and how these numbers have been important throughout history, including Operation Shock and Awe by the United States, the beginning of the Iraq War, the establishment of the Arab League, which is essentially the United Nations of the Middle East, and again, how it all comes back to the Freemasons. So let's begin by looking at how many yes and no votes there were to bomb Syria today. There were 397 yes votes, and there were 223 no votes. Freemasons, the plural, in Jewish gematria sums to 397. Masonic in Jewish gematria sums to 223. And these numbers have much more significance than that. If you're new to my work, I also show how the news headlines are actively coding numbers that are relevant to stories. Today, for hours, CNN kept 32 minutes on their ticker for British lawmakers vote to bomb ISIS. And the reason why is because this is an important number to the Freemasons, as well as the UK and America. UK in Simple English Gematria, the 21st letter, the 11th, 32. America in Pythagorean Gematria, 32. The date of the nation's independence, the United States from the UK, a date with 32 numerology. For 2 years, I have called this the UK America number. They get coded very often. America, the big way, sums to 50, like the number of states in the United States. So let's go through this Truth Seeker. We're going to talk about a lot of things. I guarantee you will have a lot of important knowledge besides just the numerology and gematria, but by the time we're done. Masonic, though, in Jewish gematria, 223, like the no votes. The Synagogue of Satan, which is a name that comes from Revelation of the Bible. And I don't talk about Revelation because I'm a Christian. I talk about it because I've been researching what's going on in this world for more than 15 years, and I have seen that the Bible is very much used as a playbook. Think about how in 2013 there was the bombing of Damascus with supposedly chemical weapons that got a national outcry led by the United States, President Obama and John Kerry, who began beating the war drum for Syria. That happened late 2013 in Damascus, which is a sign of the end times from the book of Revelation. In Revelation, the synagogue of Satan are named as the false Jews who will rule in the end times. In this world, you could very much say that is the Zionist Jews, who control media, who control movie studios, record companies, control governments, have their own state now in the Middle East. That is the Israel, the Zionist state, the synagogue of Satan. Israel's Mossad, which is the equivalent of the United States CIA, was called ISIS for many years. ISIS, which is now the terrorist boogeyman that is being promoted through all of these stories, which is the reason Britain is bombing Syria now. The news headlines are that they are already bombing Syria just hours after making the vote. Giddy to go to war. Eisenhower, former president of the United States, gave the speech and coined the term military-industrial complex. He said if the people didn't speak out and stop this military-industrial complex, it would grow to be a nightmare that no one could fathom. Fast forward to today, 50 years later, and we are constantly being scared by our own government with false terrorist threats that possibly even pays for mercenaries to create terror so that they can then police it, spending our tax dollars on bombing and killing needlessly. It's a sick machine because it creates money, it creates wealth, and it maintains power and control. This number 322, these numbers 223, they remind of the date March 22nd, which can be written 3/22 or 22/3, depending on where you are in the world. On March 22nd, 2003, that's a typo, it should say 2003, the United States bombed Baghdad in Operation Shock and Awe with their Air Force. George W. Bush was the president at the time, who was a former member of Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones is the Masonic order at Yale that goes by the number 322. The Bush dynasty, all of their family members have been in Skull and Bones, and they're also from New Haven, Connecticut, where Yale is. Very much connected to their family. On March 22nd, when George W. Bush was the president, Baghdad was bombed. Look at this all about Skull and Bones, the Masonic Order, and George W. Bush, former member. Bonesmen are what the alumni are called of Skull and Bones, which has gematria of 33 with the S exception 42, like the word Freemason. George W. Bush graduated from Skull and Bones in 68, 33 years before 2001 when he became president. Also in 68, World Trade Center construction began, and 911 was made the national emergency dialing code. Think about 911 in the World Trade Centers. George W. Bush is born July 6, 1946, a date with 33 numerology. I want to take you back to 2004 when John Kerry and George W. Bush were running for president. Both men were members of Skull and Bones. They were asked about it on Meet the Press. See how they responded.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
wild.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the record.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look for...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction that he's taking the country. We can do a better job, and I intend to do it.
And we'll be watching. Be safe on the campaign trail. John Kerry, thanks for joining us. And we'll be right back.
These are the Masonic men who rule over us. Skull and Bones allows 15 members per year. Think about two men being the top candidates for President of the United States being from a secret society that allows 15 members per year. There were 397 yes votes today, Truth Seeker. Yes, 397. Freemasons equals 397. Again, 223 no votes like Masonic. These are tributes, Truth Seeker. The headlines from March 22nd, 2003, the beginning of Operation Shock and Awe. Needless bombing, needless destruction, waste of money, waste of resources, waste of life. All news networks reporting the same numbers today. It's no misprint. They're referencing the November 13 terror attacks in Paris as justification. Remember, these were another hoax by the numbers with these same numbers coded in. In a moment, we're going to watch Wesley Clark, what he said today, and then I want to take you back in history to what he said about Syria in the days after September 11th. Before we watch the video, though, with Wesley Clark, check this out, Truth Seeker. He's the former leader of NATO, a former four-star general in the military. Notice that the Pythagorean gematria of military is 44. 44 is the kill number. Wesley Clark in gematria equals 44. Remember his purple tie, too, Truth Seeker. NATO in history, this international military force, was established on April 4th. 4-4, like military, like Wesley Clark. Also, 4 plus 4 plus 49, a numerology for the date, sums to 57, just like the word army. This stuff is no coincidence, Truth Seeker. These are how the Freemasons have built this world around us, the names we're used to hearing, all part of a code. Let's watch Wesley Clark today on the news, what he says, and then I'm going to take you back in time to years ago so you can compare what he once said. Here we go.
Started by asking if Britain's contribution, assuming it's approved by Parliament, would really make a difference. This is what he had to say.
I think it would make a difference. It's not only the weight of the aircraft, but it's the moral contribution. It's knowing that the UK is in there, and once the UK gets involved and the aircraft come in, we'll expect to get a lot of political leadership and help from the UK in that way too.
Many critics of this campaign say bombing an air war is just not enough and that more is needed.
Well, of course it isn't enough, but it may help to keep ISIS off balance. It certainly can act to put more pressure on ISIS and distract it from other activities. But we've been looking at this through the wrong end of the telescope. And what we have to really do is think about this as a struggle for the future shape of the Middle East. And it's about Syria. Will Syria be a state that is aligned with Iran? If so, then Turkey and Saudi Arabia object. Will it be a state that's purely Sunni? Then the Alawites and Christians have to leave. So how will we manage Syria? That's what this fight is really about. And the strategy for the West has to be to align all of the non-ISIS elements together and then close out ISIS. And this presumably is what we're doing in Vienna, although we're not hearing that much about it internationally. The diplomacy is really the leading edge of this, because if we can find the compromise between Iran's positions, Turkey's positions, Saudi Arabia's positions, so that all of the non-ISIS participants can line up on the same side, then ISIS is easily dealt with. Otherwise, putting military forces against ISIS, you leave a leadership vacuum, a public governance vacuum in the region, and ISIS just comes back out of the woodwork and you start all over again.
So what you're saying is there's some sort of accommodation needs to be made, a sort of Bosnia model type solution. In terms of the filler you're speaking about, the US has just announced that they're going to be sending in specialized expeditionary targeting force. I mean, that's just a euphemism for combat troops, isn't it?
Well, sure, they're going to be able to fight, but they're not combat troops in the sense of being able to hold terrain. So they're not going to replace the Iraqi troops that are on the ground. But this is another measure. It can help. It can keep ISIS off balance. It can prevent further consolidation of ISIS gains, let's say, in some towns in Iraq. It might be able to intervene and stop some horrific projected execution process that ISIS has set up. But it's not going to fundamentally alter the calculus on the ground, and it's not going to eliminate ISIS. To do that, we have to work the politics. As you say, it's like Bosnia. It's much more complicated. It's much more difficult than Bosnia was. But like Bosnia, it has to be solved first by getting a consensus from the outside powers on the future shape of Syria.
So it sounds like Wesley Clark is on board with the mainstream message these days. That's disappointing because this is what he said. He revealed some information to the public years ago. Check this out, Truth Seek.